Nehemiah chapter 3, and you start to read it. There's names galore in here, and so I'm not going to read much of it. You start, the first one is Elishabib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep's gate. This is the high priest went to work, right, and rebuilt the sheep's gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the tower of Hanel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zacharias, son of Iram, built the next to them. And the whole chapter goes on like that. And so I'm not going to carry on reading names because I get tongue-tied. But they rebuilt the gate. They set everything in place and they blessed it. Why? Because that's the entrance to their city. That was the first thing that they rebuilt. Before they rebuilt the wall, they rebuilt the gate. Got the gate in place. But the whole thing goes on with lists of people that helped to rebuild. It wasn't just Nehemiah. Nehemiah went back with the idea, surveyed what had to be done, told the people what needed to be done, and the people got on with it, including the high priest. I just think that we're shown so much. This is just chapter 3 is just how or who built what. As you go in further into Nehemiah, you see other problems that arose for them. But it's getting on with it. We've just sung, I will build my life. You are a firm foundation. We've declared that Jesus is our firm foundation, and we will build on him and build on from there. There's lots of things going in the background that we don't see, that are done that nobody will ever know about, and they don't need to know about. Because we just need to get on and do it. But there are other jobs that it's going to take all of us. And it's no good saying, I have no skill in doing that. Both Jonathan and David could have come to me and said, well, we'd like to do something, John, but... And when I say, well, we're going to rip this out, and we're going to rip that out, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. They could have both said, but we don't have any skill in that area. What they said was, we're willing to come and work alongside you. We're willing to come and do it. So it's not always about just doing it on your own. We need to look for the people with the skills in our congregation. One of the things that I used to do when I used to run big projects is I would go on site, and I used to have a group of Irishmen, electricians. We used to fly them in, especially from Ireland, because they were so good. And I go on site, and the first time I ever went on site with this group of Irishmen, they came to me and said, John, we need an extra pair of hands to pull in this cable. And I said, fine, okay, I'll come and do it with you. And so I got my overalls on, and I went on site with them, and they looked at me. And says, well, what do you want us to do? I said, no, I ain't going to tell you what you want to do. You're going to tell me what you want me to do. You've asked for an extra pair of hands. I'm going to work. You're the professionals. You know what you're doing. You know how to pull these cables in better than I do. I just know what should happen at either end of the cable. You tell me where you want me to stand, what you want me to do, how you want me to do it. And I just worked alongside them and allowed them to use their skill, because they had more skill at doing that than I did. And sometimes we've got to look for people with the skills and say, yeah, I can't do this, but if I work alongside that person, we can do it together. They can tell me what to do, how I can do it. And then I can get in there and help out. I can do whatever is needed to be done if there's somebody there to show me what to do. And we can all work together in that way. And there are times when you've got to say to people, look, you're too busy to come and do this. You go and finish that first. When you're ready to come back and do it, then come back and do it. But there are times. But there are also times when we can use that as an excuse. I'm too busy elsewhere to come and do. So we have to be careful that we don't use excuses not to do God's work. What is God's work? That's a question, isn't it? That's a question. What is God's work? Well, if you read Nehemiah, God's work was actually rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. God's work for us is partly making this building look respectable and getting it so it looks good from the outside and the inside. What's to be done? There's lots of decorating to do. Every window frame on this building, every place where there's paint on the outside of this building, needs painting. Rubbing down. Cleaning. And painting. Once we get in there finished, all the ceiling tiles, once we've got them all back and fit, we'll need taking down and probably painting. The walls will need painting. I can tell you in the back room there, the walls need filling and painting. The room itself is just about ready to be used. Because what we're hoping to do is when our young people, when they used to sit in the corner over here, we're going to open that door up and wedge the door open so they can go in there at the moment. And they can sit in there quite happily and do the drawing and everything else and be safe, COVID safe. The corridor is going to need redecorating. The classrooms will need sorting out. There is something for all of us to do. And it could be that you can say, well, I can't do anything physical, but I can make cups of tea, and you can come and make cups of tea for those that are working and support them. I cringed once when I was in Romania, and this Romanian church was building their own church building. They had a building that they were worshipping in. It was didn't meet their needs, and the pastor stood at the front, and they'd had their collection, and they put their offertory in, and their offertory had gone, and then the pastor stood at the front and he said to each person individually, and I aren't going to do this to you, but this is what they did. He said to each person individually, what are you going to do for the new building this week? And in their service they had to say what they were going to do. And some of them said, I'm going to give 2 hours to the building this week. I will be on site for 2 hours. Somebody else said, I will give so much money to the building this week. And somebody else said, I will fetch all the food for everybody that's working on the project this week. But everybody in that congregation had to commit to doing something that week. And he asked them the same question every week until they finished the building. And I think sometimes we're a bit, ooh, couldn't do that, you'll upset somebody. But they did. Out in the Philippines, again, it was embarrassing. They had no money, and yet the pastor stood at the front, they had their offertory, then he said, right, we're going to do an offertory now to give to mission. And they had a second offertory to give to mission. And he looked in the pot, and he said, there's not enough money in here. We're going round again. And so they went round again. And at the end of it, he looked in the pot again. There's still not enough money in here. And he kept sending that bucket out. Well, he didn't send it out. People came to the front and put in it. But he kept sending it until they'd reached what they needed to reach. And we get embarrassed here in this country. I mean, I've told that story in a few churches, and you couldn't do that in this country, John. You'd lose all your church. But these were two countries where they'd nothing. They couldn't afford, you would have said they couldn't afford to give. And yet they gave. And they gave. And they gave. And did you hear people moaning and groaning as they went out? No, they went out rejoicing. And that's what amazed me, because if I'd have done that in a church in this country, I could imagine as people going out the door, well, I think that's a damn cheek, that. I don't think he's got any right to say that sort of thing. But these people didn't. They had a right to moan because they'd got nothing. And yet they went out and they said, wasn't this service this morning great? Wasn't it great that we got that amount of money to be able to give away? And I'm thinking, well, I don't understand this. But we have the same thing when Nehemiah's building the wall. The people are willing to give. Give of the time. Give of the skills. Be able to build together. It's never easy. Being a pastor is not the easiest job in the world. Sometimes you've got to say things that are so difficult, especially if you talk about money. I will guarantee you, most pastors will not talk about money. They'll leave it to the treasurer. And they're wrong. We need to talk about money. We need to talk about where we're at as a church. We need to know that God calls us to give. But I ain't going to get into the money side of it this morning, because we're talking about building the church. Jobs to do. The wall outside needs somebody to come and just take the cement off the top of the wall. Just bring a chisel and an hammer and tap it away. It could be that you spend 10 minutes on it and then you've done, and then come back another day and spend another 10 minutes. But the top of the wall needs smoothing off, ready to put a wooden seat on top of it. We need to get a water supply into the vestibule so we can put a kettle in there and make cups of tea for people that walk past. And then we're going to need people just to sit on the wall and have a cup of tea and say good morning to people. Good morning, are you all right? And if they stop and start talking to you, would you like a cup of tea? I'm just having my cup. Do you want to join me? I'll make you one. That's building. That's what we can do. I believe we've got so much we can do in this church. So much we can do. And I'm willing to say now that if you're willing to give your time, I'm willing to give mine. So if you can come at 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night, I'll come here 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night. So we can do whatever you've got to do. It's not a problem. If you can give time to the church and you think, well, the church won't be open, you tell me what time you can give. We'll make sure the church is open. There are ways of doing it. It doesn't have to be that we set aside a Saturday and say, we're going to have a Saturday morning. If you can make it, please come. Because not all of us can make it Saturday morning. But if you can see something that needs doing, then tell us about it. And if you're willing to do it, then say so. But if you don't know how to do it, then maybe we can get somebody that can do it and you can work alongside them. But we can arrange a time that suits you, not that suits us. I've been blessed ever since I came here, working alongside different people in different aspects of work, getting mucky with some people. Me and Craig got absolutely filthy next door in that room there. You can still see the stains on the wall. And we got coated in gunge and muck, but we worked together and it was good. I've had times with Dave and Jonathan and Hillary and Tracy and Earl and all sorts of different people doing different bits of work. And they're just a few that I've mentioned. Doing different things, working together. And sometimes it's jobs I can't do, but they can. But it's been good to work alongside them. Sometimes it's jobs that I can do that others have worked alongside me. Jonathan this morning was such a blessing when he walked in. I got here this morning and none of the TV monitors were working. The cable had gone down. We've had all sorts of hits and misses on all sorts of things this last week, but this morning this cable had gone down to the monitors. And I tried, Sam had bought a new piece to put in, so I put that in and that didn't work. And I was getting to the end of my tether and I thought, I've got to stop. So I went up to the Oaks building because they're using it up there as the other church are using up there this morning. And I got in there, the boiler had gone off. So I had to relight the boiler this morning. And I got back down and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And just as I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Who walked through the door but Jonathan? And I just said to him, Jonathan, this is down. Can you do out with it? And he just took over. And we've managed to get one monitor up and running. But sometimes it's just a matter of seeing somebody else that brings you relief. Somebody else that can put another idea in there. So I would say, let's get together. Could be you as a family that comes up to do something. It could be individuals, but let's get on with the work. We can do it safely. We can do it under COVID rules, and we can get the work done. If it's trimming the bushes outside, all you've got to do is bring a pair of secateurs anytime you want to come up. Trim the bushes. Because some of that work needs doing. Picking litter up. All that means that our building starts to look what it should look like. Special. And if it ain't special to us, how can it be special to the people on the estate? Jerusalem had its walls ruined, its gates burned. And Nehemiah knew it needed to look good. Why? For the Jewish people? No. Because it was a city of his God. And he needed his father's city to look right. For me, this is God's house. I'm not saying this is where God lives. This is God's house. A place where we come to worship him. And it needs to look good. And so for me, the priority is to make it look good. And I will try my best to do that. And I will try and do it with whatever materials are around. When you get a chance to go into the new kitchen and have a look at the new kitchen, it cost us next to nothing to do. Why? Because we use materials that were already on site. And labour that we already had. I just commend to you that we need to rebuild. And I've been saying it for quite a while, I know. And it is an hobby horse. And Nehemiah gives us that opportunity to look at that and how we can rebuild. And so I thank Simon for saying to me, I think we should do Nehemiah next, John. It wasn't my choice, although I love Nehemiah. But when somebody comes to you and says, I think we should, you look at it. And so I like to thank Simon for being open in coming and saying, I think we should. Let's remember what God's got for us. Let's just worship him.